Hey everyone. So in this video, we're going to take a look at reading and annotating a text for style. So when we're doing literary analysis or rhetorical analysis in this case, we are going to look through and focus on language choices and structure choices that really kind of set this piece apart. So one of the things to keep in mind as you move forward is to look for things that make a certain text stand out from something else. So in this video, I'm looking at this text called What's Wrong with Cinderella by Peggy Orenstein. And we're just going to kind of go through and I'm going to show you just a few things that I'm annotating for in order to complete the rhetorical analysis. So let's go ahead and get started, and we're going to take a look at this opening paragraph. And if you'll notice, this first sentence starts, I finally came unhinged at the dentist's office, one of those ritzy pediatric practices tricked out with comic books, DVDs, and arcades, where I'd taken my 3-year-old daughter for her first exam. So I'm going to mark this because essentially what Ornstein's doing here is starting with a personal anecdote. So what we have is this kind of personal story here that is going to set up the fact that she has been in this situation before. So when we think about that, if we're looking at she's been in a situation before, what we're looking at here is essentially ethos, right? The author is establishing credibility to help us understand that she is an authority or a trustworthy source of information on this particular topic. And then, of course, this whole paragraph right here is going to be the story. So I just marked it there and then made a note that we used a personal anecdote, and I'd put a little comment there that it is kind of an ethos appeal. So as we continue on through the story, we get this little statement right here after the author says that she kind of snapped, and then we get, she stared at me as if I were an evil stepmother. And one of the things that I would just kind of note there is just kind of the idea of inserting some humor here. So it's not just a serious kind of thing. We're also utilizing some humor to tell that story. And then we'll continue on until we get to kind of the end of this story where we get the child asking, "Why are you so mad, Mama? What's wrong with princesses?" So we've got this story, and then what we're going to see that follows is some factual information. So factual info follows. And if you think about just structurally what we've got this personal anecdote to establish ethos and some credibility. We've got this kind of humorous tone, but also there's probably a little bit of pathos in here as well to kind of set up this emotional attachment to it, because this is something that the author definitely feels very strongly about. So one of the other things that you might notice there is some of the specific word choice that's being used. So a couple of them that I'll point out here when she's talking about the dentist chair, we've got princess throne, and then here we've got evil stepmother, and then we've also a little bit further down royal moment. And so what we're looking at here is essentially we've got a lot of this like princess related language. So I'm going to make a note of that. Just say princess related language. And then I can key in on maybe any of the other words or phrases that are connected to that. And so again, that's just another thing that kind of sticks out as far as how this is written. So when we're talking about the title, What's Wrong with Cinderella, and then we notice that a lot of this kind of princess jargon is being used throughout, even in the outside of the storytelling part. Now, the next thing I noticed that, I wrote down earlier that we've got a lot of this factual information that follows. So I noticed things like here where we got $3 billion globally Down in the next paragraph, we've got a line of Princess Barbie dolls and all of the actual toys that go along with that. Over to my second page, I've got even more factual information where we've got here we got princess phones, we've got princess makeover birthday parties. Further on down, we've got even Dory, or not Dory, Dora has gotten into the princess game as well. And so what we see here is we've got a lot of examples of just some specific examples and details that follow along with this idea that this princess culture has kind of gotten out of hand. So it's not just a Disney thing. We've got other information that goes alongside with that. And I highlighted some of this stuff, but as I get ready to sit down and write about it, I'm going to quote and pull out even more of that factual information that's there. Now, as we get down to the last paragraph in this excerpt, one of the things that I did notice is this sentence here, and essentially what the author is doing right there is taking some of her personal experience as a writer. So again, I'm just going to note background as a writer. And what we notice there again is that it is establishing ethos. So essentially what we've got here is not only is this author a mother who has witnessed this from a parent's side, but now we've also got the author as a writer who has experienced this in her career as well. So two different types of ethos appeals to really strengthen that idea of credibility. And then the last thing that I'm going to key in on is this last sentence here. If trafficking in stereotypes doesn't matter at 3, when does it matter at 6, 8, 13? And essentially what we have here is a little bit of a counter argument. So the author here is looking at kind of the other side, where a lot of people might say, well, a 3-year-old child, that it's not going to matter, it's not doing any harm, and so she's kind of setting that up, and then we'll respond to that later on in the writing, because this is just an excerpt. So if you look and see, I've pinpointed, I didn't pick out every single little thing, I just picked out some of the stuff that really stood out and that seemed to make this writing different from some of the other writings that I have read. And so then I'm going to take that, I'm going to focus in on that, and then I'm going to use all of this as my evidence, which I will talk about in a different video.